Alrighty, I just want to welcome everyone to the third one in the CAD series here, the Torchmate webinars. Um, Today we just had a couple submissions, and Mike and I went through and found a few other files that customers had sent in the past that they were having trouble with, or there was just some minor hang up to getting the part cut out. And so the first one I have on the screen here is just a part that a customer had sent to me about a year ago now, and basically this was how they had it, and they were trying to toolpath it at this point and cut it out. And what they were running into was specifically on each end of the arch here, a little hang up with the circles. So the first thing that I did when I looked at this is saw what the part was, or I just clicked on a single part of it and saw that yes, it's all one shape. And so that drew it flagged to me that really these should be separate, and then these deleted is kind of the idea. So what I did next is just go to View and Show Fill, and what you'll see is basically that the circle's inversed, or it's just not created correctly. And the reasoning behind this, and I'll turn off Show Fill here, is when this was created by the customer, what he did is he just went arrange make path with those circles. Now I'll break it apart so we get each of the shapes. Basically these circles are separate now. And what happens, or what can happen, is if you make a path where it's overlapping, you're telling the computer anything that's overlapping is a cutout, but anything that's not is still a part. So what it saw was this half of the circle as a part, and this half as a cutout, and that's what the issue is. So the way that I would do this, or the way that I would fix it, is kind of doing a few steps. So the first would be to select the circles that are completely contained inside the arch, which are these 5 here. I'm then going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to click on the arch itself. Now this gives me 6 objects total, as it says up on the upper left here. They're all either the full outside or something that's completely contained inside that outside part. At this point, I would go to Arrange and Make Path on this. Now the computer is seeing this as one part. Happens to be called polygon number 3, with the 2 circles taking up the 1 and the 2 numbering. We go to View and Show Fill. It's showing those circles cut out correctly. I'm not concerned at this point with either of the ends. So this part is correct, and so for toolpathing on those holes, I'm not concerned at this point. So we'll turn off Show Fill now to simply cut out this part of the circle rather than doing a make path. What you'll actually want to do is an XOR weld. So I'll select one of the circles, I'll hold down the Shift key, and I'll select the arch with the parts cut out. I'll go over to the Weld Tools, and I'll choose XOR Weld. And as we've covered in both previous webinars, the XOR weld takes what it was overlapping and removes it from both parts. So I still have 2 parts here, but what I end up with is this circle being a separate part. So I can then delete that. You'll get a warning about history being lost. It's okay. And then we'll do the exact same thing. I'm going to hold down Shift again. We'll select this one, 2 objects, and an XOR weld. And again, just deleting this part. So this is the part that the customer was wanting at this point. Basically kind of a half ring with cutouts. Now, there's a few, at this point this part's done, but what I'd also just want to show you all is how you would draw a part like this. There's a few ways that it could be drawn. Probably the easiest is to just draw it as a few circles and then array the circles around the outside and cut in half. So we'll start out, it looks like the height of this was about 9 inches, and inside we'll call an inch and a half or 2 inches, and then the circle's of about 1 inch. So we'll just get rid of this completely, starting with just a circle. And let me turn the show fill off here. We'll start with one circle. I'll go up and I'll set this as my 9 inches for the outside circle, and 9 inches here. So now we have a 9-inch diameter circle. We'll then make another circle for the inside. And we said that there was going to be a 2-inch border around there. So in that case, this would be 5 inches. And actually, it looks like maybe it was 1.5 inches, but for our circle, we'll have that. Now, I've also locked this, so in the future, if I change one of these, it will change the other. So if we went to, say, 6, then we'd have 1.5 inches around the whole thing once they're centered up. So as we covered in the first webinar about guides, I can right-click and bring up the Edit Guide window to add guides in. Pressing Add and adding a vertical one. There's now a cross that we can align everything to. I'm actually going to cancel here and just show a shortcut to making a guideline. Is that anytime I move over one of these 9 boxes around an object, say the center one, if I hold down Shift and right-click, it will create guides in that specific box. So for the center one, it'll create 2 guides, any of the corners 2 guides, and the side 1 guide. So we now have a center point made. I can then move my outside ring to that center point. So at this point, we have 2 objects centered. And I'll zoom into that. So the next step would be then to create the holes around that. So again, we'll start with just a circle in the center here, or really anywhere. We'll move it to the center later. I'll then specify the size of the circle. I think we said 1 inch. So because this proportion scaling is on, once I change one side, it'll scale the other side to match. What I'm going to do then is I'm actually going to move this to the center of the object. And from there, I'll go up to Layout, and I'm going to choose Array. Now, in the Array options, On Arc allows this to be rotated around the part. Now, we just need to specify a radius. In this case, the radius would be, let's see, 4. Well, 3.75 to center it. I also need a starting angle, 0, and an ending angle. In this case, right now, it's 180, and that would be fine. But we'll do 360, and then the total number of objects, and I can keep clicking. And I believe the original had 12, and these circles are a little bit bigger than the original, and that's for the part we're drawing. This is same process, just different sizes. I'll then hit Close, and we can delete this middle circle. We're done with it. So at this point, all of these objects are separate from each other, and so what I want to do is select all of them. So Edit, Select All, and then I want to go to Arrange and Make Path. We can check this with Show Fill, that we have a ring with a series of circles cut out of it. In the case of the original part, this was then cut in half, and that's not too difficult to do. So if you needed a half ring or quarter ring or a specific angle, so turn off the Show Fill here. I'll go and I'm just going to draw a rectangle that's going to cover this bottom half when I move it. And since this guideline is through the center, I know that if I'm lining up my rectangle to that, it's going to be halfway down. And then what I'll do is I'll just drag this to ensure that it covers the whole thing. So if we need to cut this half off, what we can do, select everything again, two objects. One is our full ring, the other the rectangle, and then just do an XOR weld. It's going to remove anything that's overlapping. So what you're left with is kind of just the scrap on this side. And the part here. So that would be one way of drawing that object. Now, there also is a shape tool for, it's called the fan tool for arches. And it's kind of the same thing. We can move this to center on that grid line. And then you can specify the angle that needs to be swept out. So if it wasn't an even cut, say you needed that much, something like that could be set. The angle of rotation will just set at 0. And then a thickness and then also a diameter. And I'll do this real quick here so we can move on to other things. But since that's the center of the circle still, when we come in with another circle we'll make it smaller here. But when we come in with another circle to array, it can go around that as well. And you can specify how many holes around the whole circle, or knowing where the angle that it's starting and the angle it's ending, you can just specify that in here. So just a quick way to kind of show you another way of drawing this part. There's multiple ways of drawing it, so it's like most things in Torchmate CAD, there's probably more than one way to draw it. So that's kind of the first one here. I'm going to delete everything, and we'll just start from scratch here. I'll bring in the next file. Next file here was just it's a file that was created in this case in AutoCAD. I'm just going to go File, Import, and bring this in. Now, this part is just kind of a plate with, I'll turn off our material blank so we don't need to see that. It's a plate, and if we zoom in here, you can just see that it's kind of just holes that are around here. And then, pretty much a square with a little tab on one side. But what you run into sometimes coming from other programs is this coming in as separate or broken lines, especially from AutoCAD. AutoCAD in particular treats any square or really any object that's not a single loop as, it would treat a square as 4 lines that happen to meet in corners, not necessarily a complete, line that just happens to loop around on itself. So the first thing to check when you're bringing in a DXF is under the Show Fill. Normally this should fill in the way it, a normal part is, showing what's metal and what's going to be cut out. As you can see, the outside is dotted, and if we zoomed in, you would see that the inside circles are filled in, which actually they should be see-through, and the outside should be filled in, and everything in here as well. So what that's telling us is there's a gap somewhere. The dotted line especially indicates that there's a gap somewhere. So what I'm going to do is select everything here, 35 objects, which there shouldn't really be that many. Each of these lines is counted as a different object at this point. But going up to a range here, there's an option to connect the path. And what that will do is it's going to tell Torchmate CAD, if you see a gap of a certain size, try to close it if you can with something else that's right there. So we'll choose Connect Path. There's an allowable error. That's how close that gap it's looking for. We can leave it at the default for this one, or on some parts like 0.1 or 0.01 is necessary. So I'll hit OK, and as you can see, it's filled in because we have the show fill on. It went through and it closed all those shapes, and you'll see the holes now are showing as they should cut out. So the computer would know when you make a toolpath a few things. One, it knows it needs to cut these holes out first before it cuts the outside out, and then also that to offset the tool to the inside on the holes and on the outside here, put the lead in on the outside. So this is really where you want an object to be to cut. So coming in from another program, there are certain things that can happen in the way that a certain program writes a DXF. DXF is a drawing exchange file. It's supposed to be the universal file format for drawings, but it's kind of like one program writes it one way and another will write it a different way or slightly different. They can understand each other, but there's just the way that we like to describe it is it's like English. Certain words or phrases that are used here might not be used in England or Australia, vice versa, and so you just get kind of like dialects of differences that, for the most part, it understands it, but there's just some things you need to check. So, for this object, this would be then ready to toolpath, or if any modifications needed to be made, it would be ready to go. So we'll go ahead and delete that for now, and we can go to the next part here. Alrighty. So for the next one here, let's see. Mike had one that he brought to my attention, and actually what I'll do is hold on one sec. So in this file, this was one that Mike was working on a customer with. What he was running into is basically just parts weren't welding or welding correctly, and as you can see, that there's a rectangle. Looks like this is one part as well. I'm not sure what's going on here, but we can fix that. So, and then there was some letters that just needed to be added in. And give me just one second. And so the first thing would be to make, not even worrying about the letters right now, and we can move them off to the side. Just trying to get the outline correct. Generally, when you're trying to work with an object in sign making or something where you're going to be cutting out letters, it's imperative that before you even start messing with the letters at all, that the part you're going to be cutting those letters out of is seen correctly and is ready to cut without those letters. That way, when you import, you integrate those letters, you have no problems. So the first thing, anytime you're working with an object, or anytime, especially the tech support guys here, when we see a problem or something, the first thing we do is we kind of take an inventory of what exactly are all the parts of this, and then also what it looks like with show fill on. So for this, show fill looks correct, but we know that these are all separate still, so we need to remedy that problem. So turn the show fill off, and the first step then would be to select the elk there, and then hold down Shift and select the rectangle, and weld these together. So those weld together, they're now one part. We're not seeing any lines or anything over here. And I'll just zoom in on this part. this seems like it's probably a remnant of maybe extending these antlers or doing something that the original person that created this file had left over. We definitely want to get rid of that, to say the least. Otherwise, it'll come through and cut that out as well. So just deleting that. Now at this point, we have one shape and then the letters, but our shape looks good. There's no lines where there shouldn't be. Everything here is what we want to cut. With the show fill on, it's showing the space in between the legs is being cut out. That's important that it's seeing that. So now I'll turn show fill off here, and we can take these letters and put them in here. Now, the other thing would be to make sure that those letters line up centered. So selecting this object, I'm going to, again, hold down Shift and right-click on that center, and it gives me two guidelines. I'm not really concerned about the horizontal guideline, but the vertical one is our center. So I'll select these letters and ensure that they're centered here as well. We can then tell the computer basically all of this is one object. So I'll select everything, go up to Arrange and Make Path. Oh, and actually these are still a paragraph, so we need to convert that to, or text to graphics, sorry. And then we'll select everything and Arrange, Make Path. A few things that tells me or tell somebody looking at this that this so far is good is we have it selected. Basically everything we want cut is selected. It's telling us that there's just one object. That's the biggest thing. And then under View and Show Fill here, it's showing that those letters are cut out. And as we covered in, I guess it was the first webinar, the next step at this point would be to make sure that, you know, the inside of that R and the O, this R and the A, they're not going to fall out. You know, at this point, if we cut this out, this part of the O would just fall completely out. It's not attached to the sign. So I'll turn the show fill off. Go to basic, just a rectangle tool. Draw a rectangle here to hold the R. Move that where I want it. I'll just zoom out. I'll go up to Edit and Duplicate. Control D is the shortcut for that. You know, we'll put a part in the O there. Again, duplicate. I can scroll over. And a shortcut to kind of move around the CAD a bit easier is if I click on a mouse wheel or the third mouse button, depending on what type of mouse you have, it gives me basically a tool that looks like a hand. It's called a pan tool. And if I click and drag, it will then move the entire workspace where I want it. And then clicking again on that mouse button will turn that off. So we can adjust that where we need it and make one for the A as well. Now, one thing, if this needed to be precisely on the center of that A, for example, what you could do is break the path, and what that's going to do is separate this inside of the A as a separate object. Again, holding down the Shift key and right-clicking in the center is going to give me a guide that's centered on that center section of the A. And then as I move my bridge, it can center up as well. You know, if that's critical to the part, the same thing with this R on the side now, if I hold down Shift and right click, it gives me a guideline, particularly on the edge of that R. And there's another guideline right there as well. So it's going to be difficult, but so there we go. And again, if it's something artistic or it's not critical, it doesn't have to be done. But if you do need centered or aligned to a certain line, breaking the path and then having these as individual objects. But one thing to remember now is they all need to get selected when we weld this all together. So I'll select everything again and go to the weld tools, and we're just going to choose a basic weld. Oops. And it looks like I have something overlapping here that doesn't need to be. So the one thing that we've talked about with welding in the past is having two objects, or trying to weld multiple objects at once, or in this case, trying to weld across something that's not a closed shape, or we've removed these insides. So what we would want to do is I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and we're going to select these insides as well as their outside letters and all of the letters in this case. But what we don't want to select is the actual bridges. We'll also select the outside, and I'm going to go back to arrange and make path. But we'll check it in the show fill. It's showing them as cut out and ready in that regard. And because we broke the path, we're also looking at this. These objects have now separated as well. So I'll hold down Shift and click on those. And again, arrange, make path, makes it as one object. So now these are showing through. And that's, again, something that you might run into is, if your object's looking like this, where parts that should be cut out aren't cut out, but without the show fill on, they're showing up. Generally, that's an indication that they're a separate object from your outside cut. And something needs to be done to, making a path on them is necessary at that point. So I'll just redo everything's one object except the bridges. The show fill shows correctly. And then I'll select everything. So edit, select all. Control A works, F3 works. Dragging a selection box around the whole thing, another way to select everything. Then we'll go to the weld tools and choose the basic weld. And what that's done is merged those bridges with the metal so that the inside of these letters don't fall out. So at this point, this would be ready for a tool path and ready to cut. Or if something else needed to be done, a bolt hole pattern to mount this, or tabs or something, depending on where the end product or what the end product should be. So we've been going for about a half hour here. We'll take probably a 2 or 3 minute break here, and allow me to catch my breath and get a glass of water, and we'll be back right after that. Alrighty, so we're ready to continue here. I'll just go ahead and clear our workspace, delete all the lines, all the grid lines here and everything, get rid of our parts, and we'll go back to just a standard view. So the next part I just want to show here was something that was sent to me again a while ago, and oh, did I not? Yep. So what it was basically the customer in this case attempted to draw this object, and what he ran into was that it just didn't come out the right size. It really just wasn't drawn correctly. If we went through and measured all of these parts, you would kind of see that some of these things don't line up, and it's just a little bit off. So rather than just simply fixing it, I'll just show really how to draw it correctly. We'll kind of just go down underneath here. Let me move it off to the side. So again, just like anything else, and I guess the one dimension he left out that I probably clarified through email was how far in this is, but we'll just guess on this part. But if you had a specific part in mind, or a specific part, with a dimension drawing and kind of how to draw it. So there are a few ways to draw this. You could draw a few rectangles, round their corners, draw another rectangle here, weld it all together, make a path, and have your object. But and that's one way. Or it could also be done just with node editing. So for the sake of showing both ways, we'll just do the rectangle way here pretty quickly. It's not overly difficult to do. So the first thing you would start out with is a rectangle, and as the part says here, it's 53 by 21. So I'm going to unlock our proportion scaling, type in 53 here, and 21 here, and we'll move this down. So here's the outside envelope. Now looking at this, knowing that this is supposed to be 1.5 inches thick, and maybe this comes down halfway through that, the actual outside here of this part is, less 3/4 of an inch. So we'll go to 20.25, and we'll start up there. So at this point, then, what I would want to do is put our inside rectangle in. So the first thing I'll do is I'll kind of have a guide. So I'm going to shift right-click again, get a center guideline. I also want one on the bottom here, so I'm going to shift right-click on the bottom to give me a guideline along that bottom edge. Now, what we can do is go back to the shape tools, choose our rectangle, and I'll just draw one along here that hits that bottom line. We made it 0.75 less, so a height of 0.75. And again, he didn't specify in this drawing. I'm sure he had a drawing that specified it, but let's, for this sake, say it comes in 2 inches on each side from that outside. So it'd be 4 inches less than 53. So we'll go to 49. And then what I want to do is move this so that it's centered. And then along that bottom line, because we're going to weld this and this part together, I just want to make sure that there's a little bit of overlap. So what I'm going to do is actually take our rectangle here and just drag it into the center so that there is overlap. I'll then hold down Shift, select both these parts, and do a basic weld. The next step would be just to draw the inside rectangle. And again, originally the size doesn't matter. We'll change it right now. So our overall dimensions were 53 by 21. And this part, from the top here, was supposed to come down 2.25. It's supposed to come up 1.5, and it's supposed to be 3 inches in on each side. So it's centered horizontally, but not vertically. And so the first thing we would do is just set our width as 3 inches, so 6 inches less than our outside of 53. So that would end up being 47. So for the width, I'll type in 47. And know that that's going to at least center up this way. The next thing that I'm going to do is actually I'll create another guide, again Shift and right click, that goes along this top line. And I'm going to unselect everything and come in here and actually delete this bottom guide for now and create one actually on the bottom. And so what we have is a guide on the top, a guide on the bottom, and then our center. So now when I go into the guides, I know that this first one's this 1.44, just looking at the ruler over here. I can add a parallel line offset from that, and I know that we need to come down 2 1/4, so I'll do minus 2.25 and press add. So it adds a guideline in there for me. And I know from our lowest guideline, we need to add a parallel line that's 1.5 inches above that. So we've added that one in there. So I'll hit OK. I'll then move this to that guideline, and it's difficult to see, but as you move this, it sticks to that. The best way to describe it would be sticking. It basically kind of catches on that line as you move it, telling you that it's snapped to that line. So at this point, we've drawn the basic shape of everything. Now what we need to do is round the corner. So the says a 3-inch radius, and it looks like it's also a 3-inch radius on the inside, so we'll start with that. All 4 corners of this one get a 3-inch radius, so transform, round corner. It'll give you a warning about making a radius that's too big. Type in 3, and I'll hit apply. It shows you the radius it's going to make, and then I can hit close. So it's done that for the inside rectangle. Now if we look at the outside, it's a combination of a couple different radii. It looks like 1 inch here, 1 inch here, 1 inch, 1 inch, and then 3 inches on the top. So we'll do this in 2 steps. Since we're not rounding all of the corners the same, instead of using round corner, we're going to use fillet round corner. We'll start with the 3-inch. I'll hit 3 and apply. And then with the fillet round corner, you simply click in the corner that of the part you want to round. So we've clicked on those. I'll hit apply again and then close. So now our top 2 are rounded to 3 inches. And we'll do the same thing on the bottom, fillet round corner, with a 1 inch. Apply. And we'll click in on the corners that we need to round. I'll hit apply and then close. And so what we've done is we've created the object. The last step would be to select it all. It's 2 different objects. Arrange, make path, and then view and show fill. Here's the correct object. So this is one way, and for this part, it's probably the fastest way of making it the correct size. So that was quickly just one way how to do it. Now, along with that, it can also be done in node editing. So I'll delete that. Delete all of our guides at this point. So in the graphics edit tool, there's node edit. And if I click on that, it gives me my pencil tool. The way to kind of start with a part like this is just basically to rough it out, or rough that outside out where you need it. So we'll start. I'm just going to click again, click again, click to make each point. And it doesn't have to be anywhere near perfect at this point. Hit apply. And it seems something's happened to the computer here. 1 second. That was strange. I guess the screen sharing didn't like it there for a second. So anyway, so I've roughed this out. We'll go up to view and turn off the show fill. So similar to how we welded two rectangles together, that's basically what we just drew the shape instead. For this one, it's simple enough that welding two rectangles together is fine, but there are other shapes in the world that it's not as simple as just welding two objects together. So we've roughed this out, and it's obviously not perfect, but if I double click on it, I get into node editing. We kind of just needed to go through and define how each part is associated with themselves. So what I want to do is kind of choose a starting point for my shape. In this case, either of these bottom lines is the most logical choice. So I'll select that one. I'm going to hold down right click and just choose the right option, which is to set the start point. We'll set it there, and as you can see, the arrow goes out to the left, indicating kind of the direction of the part. From here, what I want to do is go up to my dimensions here, and we actually want to get to XY coordinates, and we are going to use, instead of absolute mode, we'll use relative mode. When we went over node editing last week, we talked about relative mode and how it's basically from this point, or from the previous point to this point, what changes the coordinates made. And in this case, we've selected the starting point, so it's the starting point. There's no changes. So if I select the next point along there, what it's telling us is it's going backwards 45.9 inches, and it's gone up 0.11 inches. To change this, I just go in here and type in the field 0. So what that is basically it's not moving up or down. And for the distance that we need it to move, if I recall, we said that we came in 2 inches here, I believe. So 2 and 2, so 49 total for this bottom section. So we'll go minus 49. And I'm not worried about these other ones not moving yet, so we'll go to the next node. I can either click on the next node, or if I'm not sure what the next node is, I can just stay at that node, press tab, and it tells me where the goes to the next node. In this case right now, it's saying that it went right 3.1 inches and up 1.84 inches. Well, we know that this is supposed to be up 0.75, and we're not going over any. It's just a straight up command. I can then press tab to go to the next node, which would be this corner here. I know that it comes over 2 inches and up nothing. So -2 and no change in the y. Now, if you had a part that had an angle or something like that in it that wasn't easily 90 degrees, using polar coordinates also is an option. What that is basically from the last point to this point, the direction that it went in the distance, 180 degrees. So 0 degrees is straight to the right, 180 is straight to the left, and 2 inches. So either in this case, either one works, and really for any part, any of them work. But from here, we'll hit tab, we'll go to the next node. Basically, this node up here, which if this is 21 inches and less a 3/4 of an inch there, so we know that we have to go up 22 1/4. Oh, sorry, 20 1/4. And we're not going over, we're not going left or right any, so 0. Press tab again. We're going over 53 inches, which is the full width. And we're not going up or down any, so 0. Tab again. Didn't move left or right any. And we came down, so -20 1/4. And finally, the last node came in 2 inches. Oops, -2, because it's to the left. And we didn't move up or down any. So at this point, I can hit apply. This is basically the same thing as when we took the 2 rectangles and welded them together. In fact, it's exactly the same thing. It's just a different way of drawing it. For this part, it took a little bit longer, but again, there are other parts out there that, just simply merging 2 objects together isn't feasible. So, at this point, the same thing would go. Fillet round corner, 3 inches, apply, choose our corners, apply, and close. And then going through and rounding those and drawing the center rectangle the same, using guides the same as we did before. So it's 2 ways of drawing the exact same object. So I think at this point, if would be curious if anybody has a question or something that they might need to clarify of anything we've done, or any suggestions or anything that they'd like to see here in the last 10 minutes of this this webinar. So let me look at the chat here. Any questions? Or everybody's taking a Friday afternoon nap, and that's okay too, I guess. Okay, I can kind of do a quick overview of both of those. Mike R is asking, how would you array an abstract part such as a horseshoe around a circle so that the opening is always towards the center. And then Hick7373 asked, what about a skewed star like the Torchmate logo? So let me clear all this out here. We'll just start with the apart. Yeah, we'll even make something that looks like a horseshoe a little. So say an object like this, if we wanted to array this, but always say have this opening part facing the center, go up to Layout and Array. Now on the on arc, and just to kind of spread them out here, on arc will not rotate them. So as I duplicate them, they're all facing the same way. There is another option in here, on arc with rotation, and what that does is basically do what he's describing or what he's looking for. It will rotate the parts equally around, the space that you're looking for. So, if it was a semicircle, keeping them all basically facing the center, the bottom facing the center. So it's fairly simple to do. Just instead of using on arc with rotation along with that, and then your starting degree 0, your ending 360, radius, and the total number of copies that you want. So not overly difficult to do. Just again remembering that there's 2 different arc arrays. There's an on arc without any rotation and one that rotates it equally. So there's that. Now, as far as something like a Torchmate star, or people that are, everybody here is familiar with our logo, obviously, but if you wanted to make one abstract or kind of freehand, what you would do is kind of start out with a star in the star tool, and now on the top specify the number of points. I'm going to look at our logo here. We've got, call it 10 points. And then you can specify the length or a curvature or anything like that. We'll leave it real simple for now. So we have our star made. At this point then we need to convert this into something that we can edit the nodes on. So go up to Arrange, Convert to, and we'll choose a polygon. Polyarc if we wanted to add some curvature to it, but if we just want to keep it sharp lines and sharp points, polygon. So at this point, if I double click on this object, it gives me all of the nodes around there, and what I can do is kind of just drag the ones that I need where I want them, and kind of make a burst with some that are long and some that are short. And that would be kind of a rough way to do it. Now, if I needed to, ensure that from the center these were all originating the same way, I'll back up and we'll start from just the star. The first thing that I would do if I was doing something like that is center this at the origin, so 0 and 0. What I did there was basically these 9 boxes up here correspond to these 9 boxes, and so if I select the center one and turn it red, I'm setting the coordinate for the center. If I choose the right middle one, I'm setting the coordinate for here. Top right, this coordinate, and you can see as I select these, they change. So clicking on the center box gives me the coordinates for the center, and I know that I'm centered. At in this case, the origin, or 0, 0 on the ruler. When I say origin, that's what I'm referring to. So if I wanted to make sure that each of these followed the same line that it was already drawn at, so I didn't end up with something where it was like that, is kind of what I'm getting at, is I'll right-click to edit guides. I'll go into the angle guides here. I'm going to choose, you can either specify an angle with 2 points or 1 point in an angle. In this case, 1 point in an angle. since I know my center's at 0, 0, specify that. And now I believe I made this a 10-point star. And so each point is going to be 36 degrees from each other. So, whoops. Did I not? Oh. Yeah. And as Mike pointed out, the star, I didn't specify its angle at all. So when I make a star, one of the things that you can specify is the angle of rotation of the star. We want that at 0, so that when we specify degrees, we'll keep that at 0. But you can also set where you want the center to be in the star tool as well. So center's at 0, 0, 10 points, 0 degrees of rotation. So now if I go in and I make an angle at 36, oh, it's giving me for the low point. So we'll do, was that 18? Oops, wrong button. And the way that Torchmate CAD measures an angle again is directly to the right is 0. So 18. I need to delete this one. And we'll just do another one that's at what 18 plus 36 would be. Yeah, 54. Friday afternoon catching up with me. So we'll just do a few of them for now. We'll hit OK here, and as you can see, they also, because it's an infinite line, it goes through on the other side because we happen to have 10 points. So again, we're working with a star at this point. So arrange, convert to polygon. Then when I go into node editing here, as I move this node, it's going to want to catch on this line. And so since that line originates from the center of my star to the angle that it originally was at, it stays along that. So that's kind of how you can ensure that your star doesn't deform, or you're not deforming your star, but keeping the star the shape it is, just stretching out the beams, I guess you could call them. So it's kind of the quick way of doing something like the Torchmate logo or the Torchmate burst in Torchmate CAD. So we'll go ahead and call this a day for now. Mike and I are going to be working here. He's going to be out next week, but I'll be working on getting a camera set up, and hopefully in a few weeks we'll have a webinar that's cutting, and you'll actually see our computer screen that we're running the table off of, and then also have a camera on the table, and we'll be talking to you as well. So that's the next webinar is going to be table operation, and actually cutting some stuff out and going over settings on the table and an introduction to that, and then in the coming sessions after that, we'll go over problems you can run into on your table, or operation and fine-tuning and what settings are doing in the driver software. So again, we'll get a recorded link of this up on Pirate here this afternoon, and so if anybody missed it, they can watch it, or if you want to watch it again, and we'll post as soon as we get a working way to show you the table and show you the software and have it all running and put it on the web. So hope you all have an enjoyable weekend, and we'll all be talking to you on Pirate.